Okay, so let's talk about a word that can feel, well, a little heavy. Philosophy. What exactly is it? I have a feeling it's not what you think it is. Let's break it down.
Be honest, when you hear the word philosophy, what's the first image that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's something like this, right? Old men in white robes, maybe some really dense, complicated books that look impossible to get through.
But what if that's not the whole picture? Not even close. What if philosophy isn't some far-off academic thing for geniuses? What if it's actually something that's happening inside your own head every single day?
So let's step beyond those white robes for a minute. If we want to find out what philosophy really is, we have to start with the word itself.
Because at its very heart, philosophy isn't about being the smartest person in the room or knowing everything. Nope. It's about something way more human than that. It's simply about having a love of wisdom.
The word itself is actually kind of beautiful when you break it down. It comes from two Old Greek words, philo, which means love, and sophia, which means wisdom. So a philosopher isn't some know-it-all, they're just a lover of wisdom.
And that right there, that's a total game changer. It shifts the whole focus. See, philosophy isn't some big book of answers you have to memorize for a test. It's a process. It's an attitude. It's not about having the answers. It's about being in love with the questions. Okay, so if it's all about loving the questions, where does that love even come from? Well, it doesn't start in a university or from some dusty old book. It starts with a spark, a feeling of pure human wonder.
Just think about it for a second. As soon as early humans had food and shelter sorted, what did we do? We looked up at the stars, we looked at each other, we looked inside ourselves, and we started asking, why? That's it. That's the moment philosophy is born, that moment of wonder when we just refuse to take things at face value.
And that sense of wonder, it leads us to the biggest questions you can possibly imagine. And you know what? These are questions that every single person in every culture across all of time has thought about. Where did all this come from? What are we even doing here? How do we figure out what's right and what's wrong? And maybe the biggest one of all, what does it mean to live a good life? Now you might be thinking, hey, wait a minute. Other things try to answer these questions too, and you're absolutely right. So what makes philosophy different? It all comes down to its method. Philosophy's chosen path is reason. Let's just compare it to a few other fields. Science, for example, uses observation and experiments to find explanations for things you can measure. Religion often relies on faith and revelation to explore spiritual truth. And art? Well, art uses creativity to express emotion. But philosophy? Its main tool is reason and logical argument, all in the pursuit of meaning and deeper understanding.
So we can kind of boil the whole process down to these three basic steps. First, you get curious and you ask those huge fundamental questions. Second, you use reason to poke at ideas and test your beliefs, your own and other people's. And third, and this is so important, you try to actually live your life based on the truths you figure out. It's a way of thinking that's meant to shape how you live.
And I promise you, this isn't just some ancient thing. In fact, you're already doing it all the time, probably without even realizing it. Let's talk about your daily philosophy. Have you ever been here? A friend asks for your honest opinion on something, their new haircut, a project they worked on, and you have to make a call. Do I tell the brutal truth? Or do I say something that protects their feelings? The second you start wrestling with what's the right or good thing to do in that moment, boom, you're doing philosophy. Specifically, you're doing ethics. Or how about this one? Something we all deal with now. You're scrolling online, you see a photo that looks a little too perfect or a video that seems off. And you stop and wonder, is any of this stuff I'm seeing actually real? When you ask those questions about what's real and what's not, you're tapping into one of the oldest and deepest parts of philosophy. That's metaphysics. And here's a big one. We all have strong beliefs, right? But have you ever stopped to think, how do I actually know that what I believe is true? What makes this a justified belief and not just an opinion? That whole process of digging into what knowledge is and how we get it, yep, that's called epistemology. So you see, ethics, metaphysics, epistemology, they sound like complicated college courses, but they're really just the names for questions you are already asking every single day. And that brings us right to the final and maybe most important point. Philosophy isn't a subject you can just finish. It's not a box you can check. It's a lifelong practice. It's an ongoing journey. You don't just find all the answers and then you're done. The whole point is to keep practicing reflection, to keep asking questions, and to try and live a little more intentionally. And this leads us to one of the most famous and powerful quotes in history from Socrates. The unexamined life is not worth living. What he meant was that the real juice of being human, the thing that gives our lives meaning, is our ability to step back and actually think about how we live and why we believe what we do.
So, at the end of the day, philosophy isn't about old men in robes. It's about you, it's about now, and it all begins with just a single question. So I'll leave you with this one to think about. What is the one question that you need to ask yourself today?